All right, I think we're gonna get rolling. Is this actually like magnifying my voice at all, or am I this just for recording? Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I can speak loud enough for this room. I just was wondering, is there actual sound system in here? We're just using this to have the recording for those that maybe want to listen to it later. All right, thanks everybody for coming to this session. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I appreciate Pastor Mansour asking me to be a part of the conference. We were just coming to Australia to visit my sister and my brother-in-law and my new niece. And so then when Pastor Mansour found out that I was going to be here during TNS, he's like, hey, can you do a couple sessions on finance? I would love to. So I'm very pleased to be part of the conference in that way. Man, thank you for the brave ladies who have come to this class. I noticed a lot of ladies coming by the class, and they kind of looked, and they did a little bit of double take, and they saw all the guys that were already sitting here, and I think they kind of scared them away a little bit, but I'm glad that you're here. This topic that I'm going to talk about today and tomorrow are things that I'm very, very passionate about, something that I've been looking forward to speaking to you about. Before I jump into the session, I feel like it will be helpful for me to give you a little bit about me so you understand where I'm coming from on all of this. And then I want to talk about the purpose of the session, what we want to accomplish. And then I would like to hear a little bit from you all and get a little bit of feedback from you before we jump into it. So about me, my name's Nate, or Nathaniel. I'm Pastor Skelly's oldest kid. So some of you know my dad, Pastor Kurt Skelly. Some of you know my sister, Hannah, and her husband, Zach, but they live up in Central Coast, so not far from Sydney here. I live in Florida. My wife, Charity, and our three kids, Jaden, Judah, Juliet, you may have seen them last night at the conference. We're all just here. We've been here for 3 weeks, just coming to visit. This is our first time to Australia, so we are enjoying it. We've got to see a lot of things. I am a financial planner. I'm not a pastor. My dad's a pastor. My brother Josh is a pastor. He just recently planted a church in Tampa, Florida, which is why we moved there last year to help him with that church plant. So I'm not a pastor, but I am as close in proximity to pastors as I think you can get with my dad being a pastor. My brother's a pastor. I went to West Coast and ministerial school. So many of my friends and people that I know are pastors. So I'm around it, but I'm not necessarily in ministry in that full-time capacity. But of course, my job and what I do is in the world of finances. And when Pastor Mansour asked me to do a session on finance, I thought, that'd be great. But of course, I'm coming here to Australia, and I can't really speak a lot to like the nuts and bolts of Australian tax system and investing because it's different rules. So I thought, what can I give you? What can I help you with that will be practical, actionable, but something that's going to span across different systems, right? And so what I want to talk to you about in today's session, and some of you will be back for tomorrow's session, is really this idea of how to make your money go farther. Wouldn't that be nice? How to make your money go farther. Not necessarily how to make more money, although I think when you're good with money and you practice good financial management, that will be a natural result, but what you already do have, how to get the most value out of it. So something that's been really cool for me coming here to Australia is looking at the exchange rate. So I don't know if you're aware, but the American dollar to the Australian dollar, we're looking really good right now because $1 US is $1.50 Australian. So when I'm going around and I'm buying stuff, if it says $30, that's $20 for me. So for a lot of things, for food and for clothes and stuff, it's pretty reasonable prices. I've got a good exchange rate. Now, not for petrol and for housing. Your housing prices are very, very high. But, it feels like my money's going farther here, right? And in your own life, it would be nice to have that feeling, right, of, wow, I'm making more of what I have. I'm stretching its value. I'm getting more for my money. So I want to talk about some practical ways that you can do that. I'm curious in the room, so I'm going to ask for your feedback here real quick. How many of you are in school right now? College, university? Can you just slip your hand up real quick? Okay, in school. And then how many of you are living with family currently? Living with family. Okay, that's about what I expected, about half of the room. So here's the thing. with TNS, kind of the demographic of this conference, we're looking at like a lot of people that are in school or early career. It's a really pivotal time in your life right now. My mom and sister are sneaking in the room. Everybody look back at them. They love the attention. Hey, guys. All right. So let me ask you this. I'm gonna put a question to you, and I would really appreciate your feedback here. This is where I need somebody to be a brave soul and be the first one to give me an answer here. For college and early career, for that stage of life, what are the unique financial challenges and questions that people in that age group are asking or wanting to know? I'm not necessarily saying you personally. I'm saying college and early career. What are the financial challenges and questions that people have in that time of life?
I feel like probably the biggest one is how to manage debt.
Managing debt. Huge one. You had one? Somebody?
How to get in the housing market.
Housing. Yeah, especially here. Really, really expensive. Trying to save up for a down payment or finding ways to qualify for a loan. Yeah, huge. What else? What else? Financial questions, financial challenges.
How to invest with a little bit.
Getting started with investing. Just.
You can't always invest in property. Like, if you might have a little bit banked, how do you invest that, I guess?
Right. It's one thing for somebody with $1 million to say, oh, what do I invest my money in? But when you're just getting started, yeah. What else?
Lack of financial acumen.
Right. Just not really feeling like you know everything yet. Just trying to get your feet under you. Yeah. Just that learning process. Sure. What else? These are all really good. All right. I think, and those all the ones that that were said are absolutely true. We could probably make a whole laundry list of things. How do we discuss money in a way that is helpful, that is actionable? You don't need to answer this out loud, but I want you to think in your own mind. What was money like for you growing up? What was money like in your house? Was it something that was talked about? Was it something that was a big point of stress or anxiety? Was it something that just was not even a thing that you worried about? Maybe in your family you grew up and things were good and you always had food on the table and whatever you need was bought and it wasn't even a question. Your experience and your background with money shapes a lot of your attitude and emotions around the topic. Anytime we start talking about money, I mean, think about like literally stepping into a room when the sign says finances already is feeling intimidating because it's like, oh, I don't know. That doesn't feel like my area, right? It's an intimidating thing. Why is that? Because money goes right down to the heart of what's important to you. So here's what's really fascinating to me. In the Bible, there are over 2,000 verses that make a reference to wealth, to physical, material possessions. Did you know that? That's tons. Jesus, in the Gospels, 16 of his parables talked about money. In fact, when you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus talked more often about money than he did heaven or hell or prayer or faith. Not because money is more important than those things, but Jesus gave us the reason why in Matthew chapter 6 in the Sermon on the Mount. He said, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. See, your money is a shortcut. It is a beeline, a direct route to what is really, really most valuable in your heart, in your life, what you truly prioritize. I love history. In fact, I used to teach history, so I'm going to use some history examples today and probably tomorrow. But there's a really interesting account. Have you ever heard of Mount Vesuvius, the town of Pompeii? You heard of that before? It's the reason it's so significant. It happened during the Roman Empire, like 2,000 years ago. There was this volcanic mountain, Mount Vesuvius in Italy, that erupted suddenly, and there was a Roman city, Pompeii, that was built right at the foot of that mountain. And because nobody expected it and it happened suddenly, it buried the entire town in ash, like a really tragic event. But almost instantly, all the people, everything within the city was just covered in layers and layers of ash. It wasn't until centuries later that archaeologists were able to dig it all up. But what was amazing about it, and the reason it's so significant, is it gives you a wonderful glimpse into exactly what Roman life was 2,000 years ago. Because everything was just freeze-framed. Like the streets, the shops, like even the outlines of the people themselves, it's all there perfectly preserved in Pompeii. And so as they've uncovered it, they can tell you exactly what a typical Roman city would have been like, in large part because of everything that they excavated in Pompeii. Now, I want you to think about it this way. What if your phone or your computer, you were on your bank app or checking your credit card statement, and somehow that device was able to be preserved, just like the city of Pompeii. And 2,000 years from now, some archaeologists uncovered it. And they're like, oh, what is this strange device? What's on? Oh, it looks like financial records of some kind. And they could look at your bank account, at your credit card statement, your financial transactions. What would somebody 2,000 years from now learn about you? What would they be able to piece together? Oh, wow, this person really loved travel, or they loved music, or they loved clothes, or this person went to an establishment called McDonald's 3 times a week. What was that all about? Or they really loved to shop at Xbox, whatever that is. Right? Or maybe they would find, wow, this must have been a really generous person because look at all these transactions for such and such church or missions or charitable organization, right? See, your money is telling a story right now about what's important to you. And the interesting thing is that your money doesn't lie. We lie all the time. If I were to just ask you, or you would ask me, tell me what's important, I may say something that's true or not. But the amazing thing is that our money does not lie. And so in order for us to really understand our finances and understand what the Bible says about finances, I want to give you 2 words right at the beginning of this that are going to lay a foundation for us. Something that's going to be really critical for us to understand if we want to unlock the secret of what the Bible teaches about money. And the first word that we have to understand is the word ownership. Ownership. So on your handout there, that first blank, ownership. Our money belongs to God. Did you know that? Now, if you're a Christian, if you've been going to church for a long time, that's probably not some great revelation. Like, yeah, check. I know that. But do we? Do we really? Have we sat with that and really allowed ourselves to understand the implications of what that means? Now, when we say ownership, our money belongs to God, what do we mean by that? Well, first of all, the Bible is very clear that everything that we see, the earth is God's. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, right? God is the creator God. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So everything around us in our physical universe, all of the resources, they're God's because he's the creator. He made them. They belong to him. So we understand that, sure, right. If it were not for God, we would not have everything around us. But sometimes we can tend to be very self-reliant or proud in thinking that, yes, God created everything, but I earn my money, and I built my business, and I put money in my bank account and my super fund and my, it's my stuff because I worked hard for it, and I got an education, and I got good grades, and I took risks. But hold on a second, did you know this? In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, the Bible says, "Thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth." Isn't that interesting? 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 7 says, "The Lord maketh poor and maketh rich. He bringeth low and lifteth up." So here's the thing. Even your ability to get money belongs to God. You say, oh yeah, no, I'm really successful because I did A, B, and C. Well, hold on a second. Your skills, your opportunity, the time that you're living in, where you live, your family, your network, your smarts, all of that's because of God. You didn't choose all of that. You didn't work for that. You were born with it. You were put in a position to be able to do what you do. And just like God gave it to you, he could take it away. So we've got to take a step back and in humility recognize the fact that, wow, God is the true owner of everything. Not just the wealth that's out there, but even the things that are internal to me that allow me to go out and to generate wealth and to earn money in these various ways. There's a great example in the Bible of somebody who is confronted with the principle of ownership and got it totally wrong. Do you remember the story of the rich young ruler in Matthew chapter 19? Comes to Jesus and says, hey, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? And what does Jesus tell him? Well, Jesus turns the question back on him, and the young man says, I've kept the law since I was a youth. Like, I've done all the things you're supposed to do. I've checked all the boxes. Is there anything else I need to still do? And Jesus says, yes. There's one more thing you need to do if you want to be perfect. Go and sell all that you have and give it to the poor and come and follow me, and great will your reward be in heaven. And the Bible says that man went away sorrowful because he had great possession. What was happening in that interaction? Jesus was putting a test in front of him. He was saying, young man, let me ask you something. Who does your money belong to? Who does it belong to? Because if that young man understood ownership, he would recognize that it's all God's. God was the one that gave it to him in the first place, and if God asks you to part with it, well, hey, it's his stuff anyway, and that would not be something that's too much of an ask, right? But he didn't view it that way. He viewed it as, oh, this is mine. It's my stuff. And to ask me to part with my stuff is something that I'm not willing to do. And until any of us can get to the point in our lives where we truly recognize, hey, it's not my stuff, at the end of it all, it's not mine, we'll never be able to take that step forward to doing what the second word we want to talk about, and that is stewardship. Stewardship. So ownership, everything belongs to God. Our money belongs to God. But stewardship, we manage God's money. So ownership and then stewardship. Now, you may have heard the word stewardship before, and maybe that has a certain connotation in your mind. You hear stewardship and you think, oh, here we go. We're going to talk about giving more money to the church. And there's an aspect to stewardship that should cause us to be more generous. But stewardship's way, way more than just, hey, let's have a big pep rally to give more donations to the church. A steward is a manager. That's what a steward is. A steward is somebody who's entrusted with something that does not belong to them, and they're to use it in accordance to the owner's wishes. You use things differently when you know they don't belong to you, right? So we've been here for the last few weeks. Been staying with my sister. We've been driving their car. We've been staying at their house. It's a little bit different when you drive somebody else's car. You stay at somebody else's house. Do you treat it in the same way that you would treat your own stuff? No, you don't. Because there's a measure of accountability. If I'm reckless, if I get in an accident, if I trash, somebody else, well, then I have to give an explanation to them, right? I'm responsible for that because it wasn't mine. And when we recognize that our money is actually not ours, but it belongs to God, all of a sudden there's a measure of accountability. And did you know that one day, as a Christian, it will be our responsibility to stand before the Lord and give an account for how we lived our lives? And part of that is, how did we do in managing the financial resources that God entrusted us with? Now, that's not the entire scope of it, but that is part of it. Hey, how good of a manager of God's money was I? And so that's something that's a very serious responsibility and should cause us to say, wow, man, am I doing the best job that I know how to do? We were in the guys session just previously, and Peter was talking about the parable of the talents. Do you remember that parable that Jesus taught about the servants, and they were given different amounts of money? And what's interesting about that parable is the two guys that were given more money did a great job. They doubled their master's money. But the third guy was really scared and didn't want to mess up because he's like, oh, my master's like a really demanding guy, and I'm scared. So he just took his money and he buried it in the ground for safekeeping. And then when the master returns, the first two servants are commended. Great job. And the third guy says, hey, I was scared. I know you have high expectations. I didn't want to mess up. Here's your money. Every cent is accounted for. And the master has a really harsh reaction because he says, you are wicked and you are lazy, and he casts him out. As I read that story, I'm like, that seems like an overreaction, right? Like, the guy didn't steal your money. He didn't embezzle it. He just played it safe. He's just a conservative guy. The point of that story was that when the master gave those servants money, it came with an expectation that you are to use this money in my best interest, the owner's best interest. You don't do with this what's best for you. You do with this what's best for me. And that's what God requires of us. He says, I've blessed you. And by the way, we're all incredibly blessed. I know sitting in this room today, many of you feel like, Nate, what are you talking about? Like, I have no money. Right? Think about the time that we live in, the place that we live in, the opportunities that we have, the standard of living that we enjoy is so much better. I don't want to have lived 300 years ago. I don't know about you. I'm glad I live now, right? But that also means that there is a greater responsibility. God says, I've given all these great things to you, but I want you to use it in my service. And if you're going to be like that guy that says, oh, great, I'm just going to kind of take it and bury it in the ground, play it safe, God says, I would rather give it to somebody else who's going to do something with it, right? That's why in Luke chapter 16, the Bible says, he that is faithful in little is faithful in much. He that is unjust in that which is little is unjust in that which is great. In other words, there's this principle that what you do with a little bit is what you'll do with a lot. And here's a really difficult thought. What if the reason that you're struggling, that God has not entrusted you with more in the area of finances, is because you haven't done a good job with what he's already given you? Now, I don't know if that's actually the case, but I'd venture to say that very often happens. And sometimes here's where we got to be careful, especially when you think about, college, early career. Famously, people in their college early career, they're not making a lot of money. They don't have a lot of financial resources. But here's the trap that you could fall into. You might start to think to yourself, oh, yeah, the millionaires, the people with lots of money, they ought to be generous. They ought to be doing more because they have a lot. But me, oh, poor little me, what can I do? I don't have a lot. So therefore, it doesn't really matter what I do with my stuff. No. Faithful with little, faithful with much. That's how it goes. And it's really important in this stage of life to say, how do I build the healthy financial habits to be faithful with a little bit so that later on, God can entrust me with more and I can do even more in his service because I want to be a faithful manager. Not for me, not selfishly, but to say, how can I make, like we talked about at the beginning, how can I make my money go farther? How can I make more impact with what God has given me? All right. And some of you might be in management, by the way. Maybe you've been in a role like that. Who do you want to promote? Who do you want to give more responsibility to? The person that shows up 10 minutes late, who, is half-hearted, mediocre, always looking at the clock, when can we get out of here? Or the person who has a great attitude and takes ownership and goes the extra mile, right? You want to naturally promote and give more to the person who's going to do well with what they're given. Okay, so now let's get really into the heart of what I want to talk to you about today. And this is going to be a very practical framework, and I think a powerful framework that so many people have never considered before, and that is how to find your why. How to find your why when it comes to finances. I love the show. Who's seen that show, Alone? It's like the survival show, a few of you. Okay, it's amazing. You gotta watch it. Here's the premise. They take 10 contestants, and they'll take actually, they just did one. I've not seen it yet. They just did one in Australia. Most of them are in Canada, but they take them to like really remote areas, and then each person is taken to like their own spot. So, as the show implies, alone. You can bring 10 items with you, and it's from an approved list. You can bring like a tarp, you can bring a knife, you can bring a flint for like starting fires, bow and arrow, so there's a few things that you can bring. There's 10 items, so you choose, and then they give you a bunch of camera equipment, because you have to film, a certain number of hours every day and kind of show what you're doing. Last person standing wins, and it's like $500,000 or $1 million. It's fascinating. And these are not like random people off the street who are like, here's a tent, go survive in the woods. Like, these are like legit people who know what they're doing. They're survival experts, many of them. And just to see how they adapt, build their shelters, and find food and water. It's really, really cool. Every time I've watched, I think, 4 seasons so far, at the beginning of the season, I'm always like, the first episode they're introducing all the people, and there's like 2 or 3 people in my mind. I'm like, that guy. Oh, yeah, I can tell. I think he's one of the favorites. So far, none of the people that I thought at the beginning were going to win have won. It's really, really weird. And in almost every season except for one, the person who ended up winning, I would have put them in the bottom 5 at the beginning of the show. Because I've been like, these didn't impress me. What you find is that in order to win alone, you have to have a combination of 2 things. You have to have the technical skills. You got to know how to build a shelter. You got to know how to survive off the land. I mean, you just have to. But you've got to have willpower. The last season that I watched, this guy, he got to day 50. They're way up in Canada. It's getting into the wintertime. It's just getting crazy cold. And he just decided, you know what? I'm kind of struggling. He wasn't getting any food. And he was thinking, I got to get to about 75 days in order to have a chance. He's like, I'm just gonna fast. And he fasted for 3 weeks. He's like, I'm just gonna basically bunker down in my sleeping bag, try to minimize any activity, and not eat, and just kind of wait this thing out, and that'll get me pretty much to close to the finish. And that guy won. But you know what he constantly kept talking about? He's like, me and my girlfriend, if I win this $500,000, this is going to set us up. It's going to change our life. And he would just talk about that every day. The interviews, the camp, he just kept talking about, yeah, man, if I could just get to the 75 days, it's $500,000. What it's going to do, where we're going to be. He had a really deep why for why he was doing this. And there's some people that go on that show who are really good at the technical stuff, but they get to about 30, 40 days, and they're like, you know what, I don't need this. I want to go home and see my family. I'm getting tired. I don't want to jeopardize my health long term. I'm out. The people who really make it are the people who have a deeper, strong why that propels them forward when other people give up. And I would say in your own finances, when you can unlock that why underneath, it will propel you forward to make good financial decisions and get into a healthier financial state when other people would have otherwise given up. Okay, so what does that look like exactly? Without a clear why, what you'll do, you'll often succumb to your natural impulses. You ever done this before, like with a diet or with working out? There's a great book called Atomic Habits. Has anybody read that before? Okay, a few of you. Great book by James Clear. What he talks about is, as human beings, we tend to try to build habits the exact wrong way. We're like, oh, I need to go on a diet. I need to get healthier, and I need to start working out. So I'm going to go on this like crazy intense 30-day workout plan. So we go from like doing nothing to like sprinting. And we maybe we do it, but then after the 30 days, then what? We just kind of go right back into the same old. He said what really works for human beings is not like crazy shifts and like going from here all the way over to here, but rather making small, incremental, gradual changes. Because that sticks. That actually you build habits that you will stay with, and then you continue to build one on top of each other. And that's what I would encourage you to think about when it comes to your finances. Simon Sinek, he's the author of Start With Why. If you want to watch a great talk, it's been out for years now. You may have seen it before. It's on YouTube, Start With Why. You just go to YouTube and type in Start With Why. It's about, 15 minutes. And in it, Simon Sinek talks about how great companies and great leaders start with why. And he uses the example of Apple computers. He says Apple starts with why. Other computer companies, they'll say, wow, look at our laptops. They have RAM, and they'll look at the screen, and they'll give all these specifications for why our computer or why our phone or whatever the device is so great. And people look at that and they think, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it's not. It's not a very compelling picture. What does Apple do? They come at it from the complete different perspective. What's their motto? Think different. At Apple, we believe in thinking different. We want to challenge the status quo. That's why we make devices that are beautifully designed, intuitive, and easy to use. It's a lot more of a compelling pitch to say, oh, yeah, I also like to think different. I like to be creative. I like to have devices that are beautifully designed and intuitive and easy to use. Yeah, sign me up for that, right? And that's why Steve Jobs, and you could use other examples. You could look at Nike and other companies that have done similar things. They start with why, right? They get to the core of what they do, and people will buy why you do a lot faster than they'll buy what you do. It's a great quote from Will Rogers. He says, "Too many people spend money they don't have to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like." You ever been there before? Here's the trap we'll fall into with our finances. We don't really have a why. By the way, is this like hot in here? Is anybody else feeling toasty, or does it feel good? Thanks, guys. We get a little bit airflow in here. It was feeling really good coming from the auditorium. I was a little bit chilly in there, and I walked in here. I was like, I'm feeling good, but now I'm like, oh, it's getting a little bit. What was I saying? Okay. So a lot of times we'll fall into this trap of we're just kind of reacting financially. We're just kind of spending money, and as things come up, oh, I guess I got to pay for this now, and oh, I forgot about this bill due, and oh, well, there's this trip, and I want to go on that, so I guess I'm going to put some money towards that, and oh, somebody said something about saving for retirement, so I guess I'll start putting some money away in this account. We just kind of react. There's no purpose, there's no intentionality. And a lot of times what we'll find is that we're spending money on things that really, if push came to shove, like is not all that important to us. We're just trying to keep up appearances. Well, everybody else is doing this. Everybody else is going there. Everybody else seems to, so I guess that's what I'm going to do too. And what I want to tell you is stop that. Stop spending money. Stop allocating your cash flow based on what you think other people's perception is, or other people's opinion, or what other people. Find exactly what it is that you feel deep down is your why, and start aligning your money and how you use it with that, okay? Here's a great quote. I love this. I just recently read this. The founder of Alcoholics Anonymous said this: "All progress starts by telling the truth." Remember I said at the beginning of the session that your money tells a story and your money doesn't lie? Your money tells me what's important to you. And what I want you to do is not to lie to yourself. It's very easy for us to do. Don't lie to yourself about why money is important. Look at your money and allow your money to speak for you. And if you don't like the truth that your money is telling you about what's important to you, then you need to start making changes. Does that make sense? Okay? Because we all can get up here and we can wax eloquent about, oh, I want to be so generous, and I want to be able to retire successfully, and I want to have passive income, and I want to be able to serve, I want to be we can all make something that sounds really, really great, but where's the money actually going? And if the story that I want to tell myself is this, and the story that my money is telling me is this, then something's going to have to give, right? So let's start working into the practical aspects of this. If we have a little bit of time here at the end, I should have said this at the beginning. If we have a little bit of time, I will open up for Q&A. If people have specific questions, I want to make sure I can address those. But here's a great quote that's in your notes from Stephen Covey. "If the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster." And I've talked to many people who have spent a lot of their life climbing a ladder only to realize where they landed is not where they wanted to be. And they tell me, hey, Nate, man, I wish 30, 40 years ago somebody had told me about the importance of saving for retirement. I wish 30, 40 years ago somebody had really explained to me the value of being a generous, giving person. Right? Like, you don't want to be somebody who gets to 60 and 70 and 80 years old and looks back at your life and say, what was I doing all that for? Why was I working so hard climbing that ladder? I don't even want to be here, right? Better to climb down the 2 or 3 rungs of the ladder right now and get that ladder up against the right wall than to continue to just keep climbing because, well, hey, I'm already here. Okay, so here are 3 questions, and these are really, really powerful questions. I'm gonna allow you to take some time to think on these, and then I want you to give us some responses here on the page. 3 questions to help you develop a financial why statement. I personally have a financial why statement. Every new person that I work with as a financial planner, I try to help them to develop their own financial why statement right at the beginning of our working relationship. This is how important I believe this is. Just like businesses have slogans, just like churches have mission statements, I believe for you personally, it will be a powerful exercise if you develop 1 or 2 sentences, preferably 1, that just encapsulates why is money important to me? The role of money in my life is to blank. So here are 3 questions that will help you to develop that. You say, Nate, that sounds okay. I see where you're going, but how do I even start on something like that? Well, here's the first question I'd invite you to consider. What about money is important to me? All right, and I'm going to ask all of you, just you don't have to raise your hand and tell me verbally, but I want you internally, think about that. What about money is important to me? All right. What comes to mind? And now I want you to ask yourself the follow-up question, well, why? All right, so let me give you an example. You're like, all right. Let me say, let's pretend I were to ask you, well, what about money is important to you? You say, well, I need money to pay my bills. Okay, sure. Well, why is paying your bills important? Well, I don't want to get behind, don't want to find myself in debt. Okay, good. Why is that such an important thing to you to not get behind and not go into debt? Well, growing up, I saw my parents do that. There's constantly like this roller coaster of some months were good, some months were bad. They just never seemed to be able to get ahead, and they just didn't make good decisions, and they were constantly trying to, get debt paid off, and I just don't want to be there anymore. Oh, okay. So now we're getting a little bit closer to the truth. So really what we want to do is make sure that we build financial stability for our family so that I don't go into debt, right? So that's what's really, do you see where I'm going with this? So the first answer is not the answer. What about money is important to you? What the first thing that came to your mind, that's not the answer. It's just we're getting closer. You have to ask yourself why. And then you have to ask yourself why. And you probably have to do that about 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then you'll start getting to the thing. So do me a favor, let's just take about 30 seconds. There's no wrong or right answers. So this is the no shame, no blame zone, okay? So do not feel bad whatsoever. I want you to write down on your piece of paper whatever the first thing was that came to your mind. Okay, when I ask you that, what about money is important to me, what comes to mind? Again, there is no wrong answer to this question, but we have to start putting pen to paper in this exercise to get us a little bit closer, okay? So what is it? Take a few seconds, just jot on your piece of paper. What about money is important to me? Just take a few more seconds, and then I'll move on to question number 2. Remember, these questions are just designed to get us thinking and oriented in the right direction. And then we'll be able to put all this together. Okay? Okay, so what about money is important to me? Now let's move to question number 2. Fast forward 5 years from now. What would need to change in order for me to feel that I am financially healthy in every area of my life? I love this question because it's going to work no matter what stage of life you're in. So use your imagination, go out 5 years, picture you in 5 years, and things are financially healthy. Every aspect of your life is financially healthy. What does that look like? Maybe that means paying off debt. Maybe that means doing a better job saving for retirement. Maybe that means having more capacity to give because you're not able to give like you want to give right now. Maybe that's having some money set aside for a down payment or for a trip that you want to take. Maybe that's a place that you want to be in your career, a certain job level, position that you want to be at. Right? It could be any of those things. But what needs to change? And what we're doing is we're admitting right now, not financially healthy in all areas, right? And if you are, great, then you can just write that. But I would venture to say probably most of us would not say that. So what needs to change? What comes to mind? Give you a few more seconds on that. I can tell our minds are engaged. I see a lot of faces that seem very deep in thought. So this is good. This is good. Okay, now let's move to the third question. By the way, in order to do this properly, I would invite you to take even more time than just the few seconds that I'm giving you here. But I want you to get started in this process. I didn't want to tell you, oh, here, take these 3 questions and go have fun. Let's at least start walking down that road a little bit. Let's go to the third question. And I feel like this is the most powerful of the 3. This is the Jim Collins 2010 test. What would you do if you had $20 million in the bank? And by the way, 20 million, that's an arbitrary number. Basically, all I'm saying is, what if you just had so much money that you were now independently wealthy and you had total financial freedom? So if you want to imagine 200 million or 2 billion, you put in whatever crazy number you want in there. But basically, I no longer have to work. Right? I will never need, again, financially, I have enough money to set myself up for life. Okay? What if you had $20 million in the bank? What would you do? You wake up on Monday morning. You don't have to go to work. What would you do? Now, maybe you do want to quit your job. I think that was Ryan. Okay, Jeremy. All right. I was like, wow, Ryan, I'll let Pastor Mansour know. Right now you say maybe like, but seriously, if you did want to quit your job, what would you do though? In other words, like if you don't want to continue doing what you're doing now, then what would that look like? What would your day, what would your week look like? How would you structure it? What would you spend your time doing? Right? This is where we get to use our imagination and dream a little bit. Right? Maybe you move to a villa in the mountains of Italy and you paint. Sounds like something my sister would love to do. Or maybe you try your luck as a Formula One race car driver. I don't know. No, but seriously, what would you want to do with your time? And now here's the second part of that question, right? And this is a really sobering one, but I think it's a really powerful one. Now, what if, instead of having $20 million, what if you had 10 years left to live? What if you went to the doctor and the doctor said, I'm sorry to tell you, you have a terminal illness. The good news is you'll maintain your health and your strength that you have currently, so you won't feel sick. But in 10 years' time, you will pass. So you've got a limited amount of time. You got 10 years, just like Peter talked about last night with the Clayton, that kid. Like, think about that situation. Let's give us 10 years instead of 3 months. Okay. Now what would you do? Would anything change? Would you keep doing what you're doing now, or what would you alter? What would you rearrange about your finances if that were to be the case? Okay. So think about that question, and then I want you to just jot down whatever comes to mind on that. Say, Nate, that's a bummer of a question. Yeah, I know, but it's a powerful question because it's a shortcut to allow us to get right down to, okay, bottom line, what is really important to me? What really does matter at the end of it all? Okay, so you've got those initial thoughts on those questions. Here's where we put it together. In a sentence, or two at the most, encapsulate then, based on your answers to those questions, the role of money in my life is to blank. And on the back of your paper, you'll find a place where you can write your own financial why statement. Here's, if you want to jot this down to kind of help your brain to get into gear, the role of money in my life is to blank. The role of money in my life is to, and based on your thoughts and your answers to those previous questions, write a sentence that you think encapsulates your financial why. And there are some sample statements. These are not the correct answers. These are just examples of what other people have said. Okay? So to give you an idea here, the role of money in my life is to never be a burden to my kids and to leave them an inheritance. Okay? Some people might say that. Or to share experiences with my family and raise responsible, independent children. To give generously and spend time with my family. To travel and do missions work. See that last one? That's mine. Have a flexible schedule, travel with my family, be generous with my time and money. That's my financial why statement. That's what I want to do. I want to have a flexible schedule. So I started my own business. It's the most flexibility you can have. It comes with challenges, for sure. You know, it's not easy. It took a certain amount of sacrifice. But I love it. And I love the trade-off of it. I want to travel with my family. That's why we're here. Right? That's also part of why I started my own business, to give us more flexibility. We forego some other things to travel. It wasn't cheap getting here, but it's great. It's worth it. I'd rather do what we're doing now than maybe some other people would rather have a car or some different thing. It's fine, right? But that's my why. So I'm going to say no to some things so I can say yes to doing stuff like this. I want to be generous with my time and money. I want to have the availability when somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Nate, can I ping a few questions off of you, just financial?" Yeah, happy to do it. Let's talk. Hey, when my brother says, "Hey, we're going to plant this church and we really need some people to help us, not only just physically but also financially," yeah, I want to be a part of that. I want to be able to put myself in a position where I can do those things. So what happens is when you have your financial why statement, you're going to have things that come across your path all the time, and you're going to have to say yes or no, yes or no. And here's what's going to happen. When you have your financial why statement, it's going to be a great shortcut to helping you make those decisions. I'll give you an example. A few months ago, we got 2 vehicles. The one vehicle's older and got more problems with it. Took it to the mechanic. Mechanic says, "Yeah, bad news. It's in rough shape. It's going to need this, and this. It's going to be like $3,500, I think. It was a few thousand. It was, it wasn't cheap." And there was a part of me that was like, I don't know. Vehicle's kind of older. I can't get a lot for it right now. Maybe we don't use it a whole lot. Maybe I should just cut my losses and sell it. And now. But then I went back to my financial why statement. What's the first thing on my financial why statement? Have a flexible schedule. It's important for me and my wife to have flexibility. Having one car really limits that. Decision made. If it costs that, okay. Because it's important to us to have that flexibility, and the 2 vehicles provides us that. And that helped me to make a tough financial decision that honestly I was about 50-50 on there for a little bit. And when you're really clear in your own life about whatever that is, and you have opportunities come up to say, "Hey, you want to go on this trip? Do you want to buy this car? Do you want to save up for this house over here? Do you want to move to such and such location? Do you want to take this job over here that pays a little bit more?" You can come back to this and say, what's this all about at the end of the day? Because it's not about more money. It's about what I can do with it. It's about making my money go farther. It's about having more value. It's about aligning my money with what's truly important to me. That's what real financial planning is. That's what real financial management is. Aligning how you use your money with what is important to you. I hope that's been helpful for you. I'm going to stop right here. Tomorrow's session is going to pick up from there. And it's going to talk about, okay, practically how do we start to order our cash flow? I'm going to talk about give, live, owe, grow. I'm going to talk about those 4 categories, those 4 buckets, and how you can arrange those and give you a practical framework for taking that financial why statement and running with it. So if you come back for that, I'll tell you more about that.